Hello and welcome to this brief overview of the new bulk import-export capabilities from CloudGenera. You've probably been given a link to access the import-export capabilities, and when you click on that link you're going to be taken to a very easy login page for that platform. 3 pieces of information are needed. Your typical URL that your company uses to access Cloud Assist, and then you enter in your ID, which is your email, your company email, as well as your password for logging in, and you press login and you'll be taken into our bulk platform. Taken to sort of a home page. It'll give you information about updates that have been made to the platform. But the easiest thing to do is along the top you'll see a few tabs, and you go to the Import Export tab initially. And here you can see the import screen where you'll be able to do imports. Very simple. You can choose files, read it, do an import. But actually what we will do first is actually go to export. I believe that'll help you understand a little bit of the data that's involved. So for export, you click on that export sub-tab, click on fetch scenarios, and here you'll see the list of candidates and scenarios that you have in your account. And you have the option of selecting all of the scenarios if you want to export everything. If you're only interested in exporting one or more specific scenarios, you can simply check those boxes and get that data. In this example, we'll select all and very simply press the export button, and you'll see the quick status of that download. And then when it's completed, you'll be prompted with a file name for storing and downloading the export. So we'll save, and what I want to show you right now is the output of that spreadsheet. So you can see it's a standard Excel spreadsheet with 2 tabs. Let me open this up just a little bit at the bottom. One is a candidates and scenarios tab, and the other is an app or application design tab. So we'll kind of review this briefly here. Let me kind of expand some of these columns. You'll see the candidates and scenarios tab gives you basic information about those candidates and scenarios that you selected, such as candidate name, the description field, the environment for the scenario, scenario name, a scenario description that's in that scenario. There may be some metadata in that scenario that represents the organization, and then there's the availability requirements for that scenario, any automated services requirements such as automated backup and whatnot that have been selected for that scenario, in a semicolon separated format, and then to the far right, compliance requirements that have been specified for each of those scenarios, again in a semicolon separated format. And then there are 2 pieces of cost data that can be exported, sort of a general yearly OPEX number that may be in that scenario, as well as the carryover percentage for these scenarios. So we'll talk about these 2 fields just a little bit more in a few minutes. But as you can see, very quickly you can export information about the candidate and the scenario. In the second tab, we have the detailed application design information about each of those applications and scenarios. So we have, again, that candidate name, environment, and scenario. That's sort of the key, if you will, the foreign key for that ties back to the first tab. But then for each of these scenarios, we have 1 row for every compute, network, or storage node. So for each of those rows, we'll have a tier name, the node type, the node name, all right, the description that's in that scenario, and other information like depreciation, number of nodes, monthly ingress, egress, and so forth. So you can see all of the information that you would typically be able to manually enter into Cloud Assist, such as platform and operating system and platform costs and middleware and applications and network information and storage information as well, are all exported into an Excel spreadsheet format. Okay, so let's go back to the bulk import export. And what you can do is, now that you've done an export, you can have a choice. You can either go edit that spreadsheet and make changes and then import those changes, or you can always start from sort of a blank spreadsheet and create that spreadsheet yourself if you're trying to import new information for the first time. So one thing I want to point out is that up at the top in the menu, there is a downloads menu where you can actually download a sample bulk loader intake workbook. So let me kind of download that and open that spreadsheet. This is the exact same spreadsheet we just saw, just with a couple of additional tabs, one of which is an instructions tab. All right, so this instructions tab will give you an explanation for all of those fields. It will tell you which of these fields are actually required versus optional. Right? Description fields can be left blank, for example. Right? And any sort of default information, as well as information that gives you sort of limitations. So for example, this OPEX carryover percentage, it's a percentage, so you expect it to only be limited to 0 to 100, for example. It gives you some example data in that candidates and scenarios tab, as well as in the app design tab, as well as some important listings of acceptable data. So for example, the automated services options are all going to be listed here. The acceptable values for node types are listed here, and so forth, as well as a list of compliance items that we have in our platform that you can use. Okay, so now that you have a spreadsheet of information of 5, 10, 100, or 1,000 scenarios, you would go, and you're ready to do an import, you would go select the file. So I have some sample files. I'll select one that's called bulk intake loader intake small. And you have a couple of options here. You can, on import, say you only want to load just that candidates and scenarios tab. All right. So maybe you're not ready to load up application designs. You can just go create the candidates and scenarios. Or you do have the second option of, if you already have the candidates and scenarios that are pre-existing perhaps in the platform and you just want to load up the application designs, you can select the second checkbox. Or you can do both checkboxes, in which case both tabs in that spreadsheet will be loaded. You also have a decision to make in the event a candidate and or scenario is already pre-existing. What do you want to do with your imported data? Do you want to simply update the pre-existing candidate or scenario with the new data that you have? You have to choose the option of simply deleting the complete candidate altogether and replacing it brand new. That might be a situation where you've created a bunch of scenarios and that candidate, and you just want to start over and it'll just delete everything from scratch. Or the third option is, don't make any updates whatsoever. Leave the basic candidate and scenario data, your name, description, and SLA and compliance items alone, and reuse the existing data as is. So I'm going to choose update in this scenario. And then, once you've made your file selection, what is you want to load, the rule for any pre-existing candidates and scenarios, then next step is step 2 to just simply read in the file into memory. That's going to read it up into memory. And now you actually have a choice of selecting some filters, right? Maybe you don't want to import the entire spreadsheet, but you have the option here of filtering the candidate and scenario tab with the fields that are there. So for example, you may want to say you only want to load in those scenarios that are in the development environment, for example. All right. You can choose up to 3 different filters. These filters will be in a sense anded together, so they will work all together to filter your results down to just maybe the specific candidates and scenarios that you want. All right, and once you've chosen your filters, then step 3 is simply do a start import. So I'm going to say let's do all production environment scenarios. All right, so no test, no dev, and we'll do an import. And what's going to happen here is you'll see down at the bottom there's a status section that will give you a quick rundown of what's happening. All right, so in this scenario, there's 6 actions took place and that are now all finished. You'll see in about 11 seconds, I was able to load up or update 3 scenarios and then update 4 scenarios, I'm sorry, and load 2 application designs for those 4 scenarios. You'll notice there's a cancel button, so you always do have the option of stopping an import halfway through. It won't roll back anything that's already been updated, but it will stop the process, and you'll be able to see where along the way things stop. So there is that cancel option. As you can see, it runs pretty quickly. We can go back to the export. Let me hit fetch scenarios, and you'll see it's basically the same scenarios. A new one did get added in, I believe, on this import. We can even go back in here. Let me go choose perhaps a medium-sized import. I'll read, start, and you'll see that there's a new import that's beginning that has many more candidates and scenarios to create and updates to happen. As you can see, I can always cancel. It doesn't roll back, but it does stop the progress at this point in time. And if we go back to export, hit fetch, you'll see that there is actually a longer list that's been created already that you can now re-export. So through the combination of export and import, you can very quickly make updates to multiple scenarios, create new scenarios, and really be far more efficient and productive with our platform very, very easily with just a click of a few buttons and the use of Excel. Okay, I hope this was informative, and good luck using the bulk import export.